Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Welcome to a very special episode. If you've ever wondered what is going on with your man, that he doesn't seem to be able to meet your needs, meet you in a place of deep connection, this is a must-listen episode. An interview with my friend and colleague, Casey Desharnais, that I know is going to bring you so much more understanding and really connection into your relationship. Because we are diving into a lot of what hasn't been being said, but really needs to be heard. This is really powerful stuff. I'm so happy to present this to you. So with no further ado, here's Casey and I. Casey, I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm so happy to have you on to talk about men.
Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here. I'm excited to be here. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about what's happening for men.
Yes. Yeah. And I really one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I've loved our conversations. Casey and I have gotten to know each other in the last year or so, and maybe longer at this point. And we go on walks and we have rich conversations together. We've found each other locally, but we are both coaches. And I think Casey's a man of compassion and wisdom and really intimate insight into the inner world of men. What do you say to that, Casey?
So thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, yeah, I've loved our walks too, and it's been a space for me of being able to kind of bounce things off of you and get your perspective as someone who likes to also delve deeply into the moving pieces below the surface. And yeah. I do work with men, and obviously I've been on my journey of trying to figure out how come I was so bad at relationship as a man.
Yeah.
And what was going on there. So yeah, coaching men around relationship and working through my own many areas of basically unskilled. My many areas in which I was unskilled have been enlightening. Yeah.
Yes. And that's one of the things I love so much about you is not only are you helping other men with this work, and you've learned a lot of tools and skills to help men with that, but you do the work yourself. You walk the talk. And I think that's really when someone knows their stuff, because they've used it and applied it and gone on the journey themselves. And you're still on the journey. I mean, I think we're always on the journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, absolutely. And yeah, it's one of the most hilarious things with actually right now with men, is that there's they come into the space of wow, I'm gonna work on myself. I'm realizing there are things I need that I could fix. Yeah. And I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna do a tune-up and I'm gonna fix it. And then it's gonna be running perfectly. Mm. And I'll be cruising, Mm-hmm. That's one misperception, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. And it is, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I think it's amazing, that men, how do I say this? I love hearing that men are interested in that journey, right? Are interested in even embarking on that work.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is silently, so many men are in pain.
Yes.
Yeah. Silently, men are in pain and they just have no clue what to do with it
Yeah.
or where to go to figure it out. I see it changing rapidly because of the world I'm involved in. And
Mm.
there's many men's organizations popping up to address this and to create spaces where men can get together and talk about pain and do the work, the grieving work that's needed to be done for so long, and start breaking up the stagnancy that lives within them so they can feel again.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to circle back around to that because I think one of the things that, and I primarily work with women, right? So I hear the pain that women are in, right? Particularly around love and relationship. And I have so much, deep compassion and empathy for that, for when we women don't feel like we're being cared for and loved in the way that we want. I've certainly been there myself, and I know that intimately, and I hear from so many women who are going through that and are struggling with that in their marriage. And but I also, I don't know if you know this about me, Casey, or my listeners do, but I I was raised with three brothers and two dads, and I have three sons, and I've worked also with male clients, and I have male friends. And so men and boys, males are and always have been a very big part of my life. And I also have such deep empathy and love and compassion for men and for what they're experiencing and for the ways that they're suffering, right? And really ultimately the ways that they like, I think when it all comes down to it, men and women, we all just want to be loved, right? We just want to be allowed to be ourselves. We want to feel loved and safe with the person that we're with, to be ourselves, to be loved for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I find, and this is like kind of going to diving into the heart of it, is that women that need that we women have that desire to feel so cared for and loved can actually be inhibiting of a man's capacity to feel safe and sort of unfold and love, like into being loving himself. And I want to ask you a question. So one of the things that I hear from my women a lot, like clients or people who I'm on a consult call with, is they tell me, my husband or my partner tells me that he feels like he can't do anything right.
Yeah. It's huge. It's a huge one for men.
Yeah. So that sounds like you've experienced that, or you've heard men talk about that.
Yes. The thing with getting it right is a major area of confusion and pain for men. It's huge issue, because my perspective is that so many men's original wound is when I had to leave myself and perform for love, or perform for value, or perform for acceptance, or become something that I'm actually not, that society or culture is telling me, or my family system is telling me that I need to be, or the guys around me are telling me that I need to be. So there's been this relationship with performing to get it right. And in their relationships, when there's like an undeveloped part of the nervous system that doesn't know how to speak the emotional language, or doesn't have the emotional fluency to articulate what's happening, and their partner is feeling the void of that and feels hurt and wants them to show up more, and is speaking that, and it depends how they're speaking that. But what the man is feeling is another area I'm deficient in.
Yeah.
and it's this unfortunate relationship the man has in his system that is built around needing to get it right to be of value.
Mm-hmm. And what is that like? What does that feel like?
Hopelessness. It feels like a level of hopelessness, and confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it's basically like a letdown, like another area that I won't be seen for who I am or accepted for who I am, where I need to perform. Yeah. And that's not what I believe a lot of these partners are saying to their husband or their man in the relationship. That's not what they're saying. That's how it's interpreted, right?
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so often what I hear and see with my women and have experienced myself is it's a benevolent intention. Like it's like we just want to have that love. Like we just want to have that love and that connection and that closeness and that like safety in the relationship. But yet it oftentimes, and I would say it actually sometimes is what's being communicated, and it's not just your male interpretation. I think there's both. It's not always one or the other, or it is one or the other, but it's not just the man's interpretation, right? Like oftentimes there is this well-intentioned like way that we women go about trying to experience more of that love and connection, right? That actually like for example, so many of us, I think we want our man to like do certain things in certain ways so that we can feel loved. One story is like one client of mine really wanted texts during the day to remind her that she was cared for, right? Or more affection, or more words of like, you're so beautiful, or, more picking up around the house, and then one biggie is like, so many of my women just really want their man to be able to talk about their deep feelings, right? And communicate better. But what I see happening is that when their partner can't, their man can't, or isn't, for one reason or another, doing those things, the woman feels, like you said, like hurt or upset or uncared for. And then what comes from that place is perhaps some behaviors that don't, maybe some unskillful behaviors, right? I know for me, I mean, I used to do a lot of complaining, right? Like, God, like, why aren't you doing this and that? Or like, when you come home, like, it's not so hard, right? Or even demanding, like, you just need to hug me when you come home. I don't know why I'm using that example.
No, sure.
Or like,
sure.
Why can't you talk about this? Like, you need to be more clear about this. Like, you need to figure out how to communicate better to me, like that kind of thing, right? What I'm hearing from you is that is triggering.
Yeah. Well, it is. And I think what I was trying to get across with that is the way some men's value systems are set up, or the way they perceive their value in relationship, in getting things right, or in in being the one that does things for his partner, that sees things, that gets it right, that is the hero, or the provider, the protector, all that's those traditional more masculine, I guess, ways of feeling seen, and ways of feeling like a sense of significance.
But then they're oftentimes met with, they're not doing it right, basically.
Right. So, yeah, I think the you word, like anytime there's that you, in there. Men, I think, are really sensitive to that, and it triggers one of their biggest fears is you're not enough, you're not smart enough, you're not skilled enough, you're not doing it right. I wish you could be different.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the message, whether that's actually the message being purposefully conveyed, or it's just a message that they're interpreting, right? They're taking that from whatever's being expressed. And I'm so interested in so like you said, that leads to feelings of hopelessness or confusion. I'm guessing maybe shame. Would you say shame?
Yeah, there's definitely shaming, like self yes, the shame that's kind of put around the self, and how come I can't get it right, how come I'm not doing, how come I don't know this. Yeah.
And what is that like? So from that place of hopelessness and shame, what would you say like typical ways of behaving from that place would be?
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's the unfortunate cycle is that like those types of interactions bring up, right? Like, you're not getting it right, you're not doing it, you're not doing this, why can't you just do this, blah blah blah. And the interpretation being, I'm not doing it right, therefore I have shame that I'm not the man I want to be, or showing up in the way I want to be. So what happens is I interpret almost my partner as complaining, as asking for constant adjustments, or not appreciating me. And then what happens is I withdraw.
Yes.
I withdraw, the withdrawal happens. And then it seems like that instigates the space even more, because maybe the more feminine partner is like, I want connection. Now there's less safety.
Yes.
And then the man withdraws a bit more.
Yes.
So
it's like this vicious cycle of
yeah,
less and less safety instead of more and more safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. In that space in between, sometimes the man just needs to go to his cave.
Yeah.
He just needs to go to the cave.
Yeah.
And experience some of his confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he's able to go to his cave, what happens? What happens like when he's allowed, kind of quote unquote allowed?
Yeah, when he's allowed that space, it kind of can unwind all of that shame spiral, right? Mm-hmm. He can kind of come back to a home base. And this is the thing, is that for a lot of the guys I talk to, we're really kind of slow with this stuff. It takes us a while to unfurl in our nervous system what the heck is happening. Yeah.
So something's coming to my mind. So are you telling me that when a man withdraws, obviously not all the time, but very often, the reason for a man's withdrawal and needing to kind of go to that cave and take that space is not because he doesn't love his partner, but because he's grappling with some emotional turmoil?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's
feelings about himself.
Yeah, he's grappling with the internalized shame. He's grappling with his own inner critic. He's grappling with a sense of failure. He is also experiencing disconnection that also feels frustrating and likely unsafe. But what he's hearing is, very, in his perception, very emasculating. Even though it may not be intended in that way.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I'm also hearing is that Tell me where I'm wrong, but I
Mhm.
believe that most men really want to be a great partner. They really want to love their partner well. And in fact, they do deeply love their partner, or their wife, right? But and they really want to be good at that. But then
Yeah.
they don't necessarily get the feedback or feel as though they are being that great partner. And then
Yeah.
that sort of can create this confusion and this suffering internally, and ultimately sort of the distance that grows in a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot, I agree. Tons of men I talk to just want to be good at this.
Yeah.
They just want some perceived sense of competence, right?
Yeah.
And they feel incompetent.
Yeah.
And especially when there's been disconnect for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening is they're reminded of the amount of areas they're incompetent or seemingly incompetent in, according to their partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes a man vitamin is appreciation for something small, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally want to hear more of your what can we do about this? But I also want to, before we get too deep into that, I'd love to hear. I have a couple other questions about this, but I love that. So a man vitamin. Why don't you just share a tiny bit more about that here, and then I'll ask you some more tips for us women.
Yeah, absolutely. What it feels like to not be getting it right or to not be doing something in a competent way is really it's really defeating for someone's spirit. And a lot of men are feeling that way in their relationship, and small areas of appreciation. And it's not manufactured appreciation. It's just putting the lens on some areas where you do appreciate the way they're showing up.
Totally.
No matter how big or small.
Yeah. I oftentimes advise, one of the little action tips that I have for women is to offer appreciations every day. And, I get a little pushback. It's like, but what if I don't feel appreciative? And it's like, yeah, of course. This isn't about faking it. It's actually about genuinely looking for those things looking for those things that you genuinely do appreciate, and then actually voicing them. Or
this is like pain resilience work, right? Like there could be globally in your relationship, you could be experiencing pain and disconnection, but you can always find areas of appreciation within that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so often we forget to look for those because we're as women, we're in our own pain, right? Or we're in our own suffering. And it can be hard to put on those lenses of well, where is he, doing these things that I love? Or where is he, showing up in ways that I appreciate? And I think as soon as we kind of ask ourselves that question and start looking for that, we start to find them. And then as we are able to acknowledge and actually offer those appreciations, what I find time and again, and it feels like magic to my clients when they start doing this, is that their partner will actually start doing more of those things or start to kind of come back out of the shell and show up, because he does feel safer. He does feel more appreciated. And that, I think this is one of the things I wanted to get into a little bit with you, is that safety, right? Is when we as humans are in that safety, when our nervous systems have found their way back to a safe, that safer state, that is the only place from which actually true, loving, warm feelings and interactions can come from.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So agree. And even that small, what we were just talking about, that small appreciation does create a sense of safety for masculine. Yeah. And then likely as a partner would be more apt to engage in some of the areas of disconnection or some of the areas that need some work.
Meaning like they'd be more like if there's enough sort of appreciation and therefore safety, then there may be more interest in him actually addressing some of those places where he does have more growing to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Appreciation just doesn't take away from the areas of growth and, Yeah,
but it makes them more accessible for the man, it sounds like.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Definitely, I love that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it so much. Whereas like, if for what we were talking about earlier, if he's being triggered and he's in all of those emotions that we were talking about, the shame, the hopelessness, and does like retreat into the cave, or even if he doesn't, like not all people retreat into the cave. Like there is also the fight that happens, right, or the defensiveness. And, but it's from that place, really, it's like nervous system shut down, right? Or nervous system freak out, like fight, flight, or freeze. And from that place, no human being is able to do good internal work on themselves to grow and evolve and sort of show up in the way perhaps their partner might be wishing they would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the areas of compassion and empathy that men are yearning for is their nervous systems. A lot of our nervous system, a lot of men's nervous systems do not have the imprint of safety in high emotional turmoil. Those two things don't coincide. That's something that needs to be built with trust. And the process could take a little while. I mean, I know for men, you got to think of for men, safety, emotional safety is not something men have a lot of experience with. Physical safety, a lot of men have the privilege of being much more physically safe, maybe than women do.
Yes. Yeah. I want to.
But yeah.
Sorry, I want to ask you about that. I'm so fascinated by this because, and this is kind of one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is, your own experience of growing up as a boy and maybe even as a sensitive boy. Would you say that you identify as a highly sensitive person?
Yeah. HSG, highly sensitive guy.
Yeah, totally. So you said emotional safety, but I think that for men that starts as little tiny babies. Tell me where I'm wrong, or little boys who are like raised in this culture that.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, one of the first requirements of boys is to abandon themselves. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that's the core wound is that you find out really quickly that the vulnerability that makes us all human, the vulnerability is going to be weaponized against you as a boy. Mm. And then you're supposed to shut that down. Mm. And that happens at a young age for most men. Mm. And so it's deeply ingrained. It's in a deep spot of the nervous system because it happens so early, and just like a tree, we grow outwards as we grow older, right? And those deepest rings in the middle of the tree or in the middle of the human, hold a lot of foundational weight. And they're really somatic, right? I don't remember the exact time or the exact thing that was said, but I remember the feeling. I remember the conscious, I gotta shut this part down. This leads to people leaving me. Yeah. I don't know if you have any examples of that you wouldn't mind sharing. Yeah, crying. Think of being in school and getting, either getting pushed or getting bullied or getting a person you really like, shuts you down and you feel hurt.
Yeah.
And you show that through tears.
Yeah.
I'm 40, so in my generation, that was like, that was a no.
Yeah, big boys don't cry.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you learned very early that like having human feelings wasn't okay. Like,
yeah, like that, and the perception was, that part of me must be wrong. There must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not like the image of man, tough guy.
Yeah.
Like the image that everybody wants.
Right.
I need to live into that.
Yeah. Right. Totally. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, even though you identify as a sensitive person, I think it's not just sensitive boys that experience this. I think this happens across the board with males at very young ages.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not just sensitive people by any means. This is most guys. And I think it just works better for some guys. Some men can do that and get needs met in a way that is sufficient. But a lot of men can't.
Yeah. And so the kind of conclusion that the body mind comes to is don't have a lot of feelings, or stuff the feelings, don't show the feelings, don't talk about the feelings.
Well, yeah, what happens is showing the feelings is unsafe. So I'm going to hide them and make them go away. Yeah. I'm going to stuff them.
Yeah.
And they're going to go away. Now, what happens is when you do that over a period of time, you lose any ability to have a conversation with those feelings or know what they're trying to tell you or have any emotional language for what's going on inside of you. And it just feels like this big, massive brick that you keep piling things down into.
Totally. And what's so fascinating to me about this is like women, what we're wanting from our man. I think so much of us just want to be able to connect and understand and really, it's almost, and vulnerability and that capacity for a man to share his feelings is almost what we most long for as women, right? Where we feel the most connection and love. I'm not going to say that's always true, but I hear that so often from my women. And I know that was true for me in my first marriage, was just like always so frustrated that my husband couldn't talk about his feelings and wasn't very just emotionally accessible, right?
There's a lot of men I've worked with and myself personally, the breaking of that concrete wall inside the man needed to happen with other men, or needed to be broken open in a group where there was tons of safety. Because in relationship, the reaction from in our partners, if we start to go there, is incredibly threatening. If not sure how to sit with it, if there's some anger in there, if there's tears, if there's mountains of pain, if there's, whatever kind of grief there is in that, can create a reaction on the other side.
And so that's bringing up a couple things for me. One is that this is part of why I believe that women have such capacity to lead love in their relationship and actually and this, I don't want to get too much into working with women, but that there is some way in which when we have the skills and when we have our own nervous systems regulated and we know how to do that and we know how to create internal safety for ourselves and we know how to really be more responsible for a lot of our feelings instead of needing all that care and love to only come from our partner. So we're not as trapped in that space of I need this from you so intensely that we're sort of pushing on those triggers for him. Does that make sense?
Yes.
then, and we also have more understanding and compassion for what he's going through, which is really one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on this podcast, was to help women sort of really, they may never know this, like really start to understand what's really going on internally for men, so that we can have that more compassion and empathy. What I find is, and I find this time and again with my clients who, since I primarily work with women, when my women do those things and they get to that place where they have more emotional agency, then they create this safe space for their partner to at least, I don't know if it's like the deep work that you're talking about, right? That might be really, really necessary and important, but at least it's a safe space for him to start to feel so much safer to be him. And women are always surprised by how much their husband comes forward, by how he starts sharing more of what's going on. And there's just a total shift in the dynamic that can happen there. That what is like this, what I think of as more like this, positive snowball effect of like safety creates more love, creates more safety. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what we were describing there, I mean, my nervous system just lit up, right? When you're describing a partner who is safe within themselves and isn't creating that constant pull, the energetic pull of I need you to be more, I need you to be more, I need you to be more.
Yes.
Instead, it's a bit of I'm here, come as you are.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that does feel like safety for a man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that does feel like safety for either partner, honestly.
Yes, for a human.
Yeah, for humans.
Yeah. I mean, that is like what we all, and I think I said this in the beginning, and it's really like we all want to feel like we belong. We all want to feel truly accepted, right? We want to feel loved for who we are. And that is when we feel safe. And when we're safe, that is when like the best, funnest, lightest, like most joyful, most loving parts of us actually come out.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of men have not even got to that place in their life before because that's never been offered.
Yes.
Right. That's not something that many men are familiar with, is what happens when there's so much emotional safety that I can just be totally as I am.
Yeah.
My most authentic, unique, little essence.
Yeah. And that's like this is why like I get so excited when I hear this stuff, is because what I hear as you say that is that, and again, I want to talk about men working with men and really healing from that place, but also that we as women, as we start to heal ourselves and work with ourselves and become more skillful ourselves and work with our own nervous system, all that stuff, when we are able to do that internally for ourselves, it's like we're healing the world. We're helping to heal the men. We're helping to heal just relationships as a whole. And I know a lot of people are like, well, why should I have to? There can be some resistance. I find that some women have resistance to like wanting to be part of a man's growth. But I also think it's a deep and beautiful privilege to be able to, I mean, it's a symbiotic thing. It's like a win-win thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is a real masterpiece when someone can grow into, the whole potential of who they are and a whole human who feels and can operate from more love.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful thing, and creating those conditions takes committed work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I know for sure, and you'll I know you'll get this. Many men aren't interested. or open to kind of do that growing and do that healing. Particularly, like, I know there's a lot of men who don't want to go to therapy or don't want to be in a men's group or don't want a man coach, like, and
they don't know that they want that.
They don't know that they want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are going to be a lot of, like, maybe deep down they really like the ultimate thing they'd probably love to have, but there's enough resistance that they don't want to do that. So I guess what I want to ask you is do you have any other tips about how, we women can best support our men to be their best in the relationship, or just as human beings?
There's some level of faith or belief that he can grow. He can grow and he can show up, but he might need the belief before he actually does it. He may need some of the faith that he can, because he's a human being. Just because, period, he's a human being.
Yeah.
Even though there may be a lot of history of him not doing that. There is a possibility of him doing it, especially if that partner is willing to kind of take a step back and go into their own system and create a lot of safety and competence in their own system.
Yes.
And own and be in that space within themselves.
Yes.
I think partners do respond to that, that shift. Yes. And say, whoa, something's different.
Yes.
Something's safer. Something is not constantly complaining or criticizing me or telling me where I'm wrong.
Yes.
What happens when the space becomes more loving?
Yes.
Right? Humans grow in that the garden of love, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah. So he can naturally grow, even though he may not realize or know what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that so much. Yeah. I mean, it really is the way that I've talked about it on this podcast, and I like to talk about it a lot, is as women, we can lead love. And that oftentimes means that we first start by leading our own selves to safety. I say we lead ourselves to love, but really it's leading ourselves to a sense of deep internal safety and ownership, right? Where we're not, like you said, criticizing or blaming or really angry all the time, or feeling like we're not, or just coming from that place that would then sort of trigger, right, our partner and create a sense of a lack of safety between us. That is actually the way in which we do lead our whole relationship into a space of more love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really powerful. Yeah. It's really, really powerful. And I think there's a piece of resilience in there that men are starting to learn and starting to realize, is that, through in that space, through sharing kind of some of my own internal insecurities, fears, doubts, that's actually a sign of resilience. That's a sign of resilient connection. That's a sign of resilience within me, within myself, within my own body.
Yeah. That
I can bring those things forward and articulate them, because I feel that the bounds of this container are bigger than these small upsets, right?
Yes.
So there's some faith in the resilience of what's behind the insecurities, some faith in that after some of those things are spoken and played out and learned and understood, and known a bit between partners, that the resilience and the connection that comes on the other end of that is really where a lot of the magic can happen.
I love that. As human beings in relationship, even some of the best relationships, as we could call it unhealed humans, like we're always, because of our systems, because of the world we live in, like all of us have stuff, all of us have wounds, all of us have places where there's healing to do. And when we come into relationship, we bring all of that with us. And sometimes even in the best relationships, there can be, a coming forth of these things and a kind of a clashing, right? And where conflict and upset comes in. But when the container of the relationship is secure enough and there's enough love and there's enough safety, that it's so much bigger than those moments. So I don't know if this is kind of what you were saying, but this is what I was hearing.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that then it's safe for those moments to happen. And it doesn't, I like to call it like a little wave in an ocean of love.
Yeah.
White cap.
Right.
And it's allowed to be there. And in fact, oftentimes my clients and I talk about how it's actually enriching, right? It's actually can be healing because it's allowing the humanness and the wounds and all of that stuff that makes us humans to exist as part of the love, part of the relationship, and allows for us to even grow together.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And the man's side of that is that a man may have to work to develop a safety in feeling pain, in feeling disconnection, in feeling that heightened state,
Yeah.
And that may take a while to work with, but the longer he can kind of stay with it, even without having to do anything or fix anything, even if there's just presence, then his nervous system starts to unwind a little bit and learn that he can bring forward some of this stuff and it can be worked with. And the expectation that pain is going to happen, like pain is here. It's going to happen. We're going to do this to each other. We just all are. Totally. And it's part of the beauty. It's part of the landscape. It's part of the painting,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. You do group work with men and you do this healing work with men. So not all men are going to go for this work. This is not going to happen for everybody.
Right.
But those that do and are willing to, do you want to just say a couple words about like?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Many men haven't had a experience of a friendship where they could really bring what's going on for them, really confused, really bring where they're emotionally upset, really bring where they're angry or heartbroken or how they don't know how to love their partner or make love to their partner, whatever it is. Many men haven't had that experience just in their lives. So there's a lot of trying to figure it out on my own. There's a lot of feeling alone. There's a lot of inner critic, or there's a lot of disciplining myself through shame. And that just creates an internal weather that is hard to be connecting and loving. So the men that are fed up with that way, reaching out through men's work, through a coach, is for many the first time they've gotten to talk about what it's like to be them, where they're confused, what feels loving to them, where they want love, where they didn't get love. Major things that affect the human nervous system. And I mean, many men, even just through working with a therapist, a coach, many of the men I work with, it's like they are experiencing an emotional safety or a safety where they're bringing all of themselves.
Yeah.
And it's actually applauded.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that is how that's how they shift.
Yes.
That's how they find their own safety within themselves. They find their
Yes.
deeper selves and their deeper essence and their deeper masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, oh my gosh, this was here the whole time. This grounded love.
Ah.
Yeah.
And then that, like, then of course, wherever they go, there they are. So they bring that new sense of themselves to their relationship.
It's a much different man who gets an imprint of safety outside of the relationship and then comes back into relationship. It's a much different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would wish that for all men, right? I would love that for all men. Our world would be such a beautiful place. But even if a woman sees that this would be beautiful for her partner,
yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily effective for us to be like, all right, you got to go do this, right? I do believe that there is a way in which we can support and inspire a man to do some of this work. And I've seen it time and again, actually, that as a woman sort of starts to do this work for herself, she leads it. She's like modeling, like the changes that start to happen in her can be very inspiring. And I've seen men who never before would have even wanted to do any work on themselves, like start looking at relationship books and be like, hey, honey, I found this relationship book, or like go to therapy for the first time ever. And so I love that. And I think that we women have that capacity to help our men, do their work too. But it is absolutely not our place to insist or demand. And oftentimes that will actually get pushed back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because it feels like there's another way I got to change myself to show up right for you.
Exactly. So where do you think a man is most motivated to go do that work from?
One way I've seen it work is if a partner actually has books about men around. Cool. Books specifically about understanding men.
Love that.
Yeah, because that's a real invitation. Like, whoa, does she actually want to understand my experience? And he just might open one of those books. It's a really beautiful Bell Hooks book called Men, Masculinity, and Love.
Yeah, Bell Hooks. Yeah.
Yeah, Bell Hooks. She articulates what it's like to grow up as a man in our society so well. And it's just amazing. She's a feminist and she articulates this in such a beautiful way.
I want to say that we are all in this together, right? Like so much of what you're sharing, like we're all human beings and we've all grown up in this world that hasn't taught us emotional intelligence, that hasn't taught us how to work with our emotions, that has, that as a human, we can't, especially in this world, like we can't help but be traumatized, and we haven't been taught about how to work with that. And so men are experiencing their own sort of challenges with all that. And I think women are too. And I think ultimately it's like we are all in this together. We're all working, all of us who want to heal and grow and have better relationships and have a better world. Like it all contributes, right? Like the work that we do on ourselves. And we can't necessarily do the work on someone else. The place that it always has to start is on ourselves. And we can support other people. We can do the work so that we are let's see, how do I say this? We can do the work on ourselves to make us into humans who can support and have compassion and have so much love for the other beings in our life, right? But that's always where the work's going to be.
Yeah, I think and I'm guilty of it too, can downplay how much of an effect, how much of a, node in the network we are, and how, the shifts in ourselves, how heavily they can impact our network or those that we run into. Or
yes. And that is why coaching is so wonderful, why it's such a precious gift to ourselves when we hire a coach, when we work with a coach, because we haven't been taught how to do this up till now. So we got to start where we can, which is inside us. And that is how we help others and ultimately how we change the world. And I love that, I love you for your commitment to this work and that you're taking part in it in such a lovely way, such an important, essential way. So I'm curious, where can people find you?
Right now, it's like on Instagram and Facebook.
Cool. We'll put those links in the show notes.
I also moderate and work and coach within a group called The Alliance.
So if there was a man who heard this podcast or a woman who pointed her man towards this podcast and was interested in working with you somehow in some capacity, is that how, do you work one-on-one or just in groups?
I work one-on-one, but I also, we do run groups in the Alliance. So either place, you can find me and work with me. And I would love to recommend that anyone listening to this who is a man who doesn't really have any place to go with their stuff does find some group, even if it's online, which is kind of what we have right now during these times. But
that is true. Beautiful. All right. Well, any last thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to point out that it's been good talking to you, but it's also just heartwarming to have you bring such a compassionate note to men in their work and how they're trying to show up and working to show up in better ways and to work with partners as a whole unit. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we are all humans. We all deserve compassion and understanding. Yeah, thank you so much, Casey. I loved having you and having this conversation. And I think it will be really eye-opening for many women. And my hope is that it brings more understanding, more forgiveness, more compassion for the men in our lives.
Yeah, I hope so. It'd be lovely.
Right. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, if you are not yet on my email list, you should totally hop on now. It's really a treasure trove of wisdom and insight and support for you to have the marriage that you really want with your husband. To get on my email list, all you have to do is go to lifeisworthloving.com/email. Or you can just look at the links in the show notes. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, I highly recommend you do so you never miss out on an episode. All right, be oh so well until next week when we talk again.